You know, you're a confusing man, but you might just be the best friend I got, Arthur.
Why did Sadie stay loyal to Arthur? Why, even after Dutch brought both her and Arthur into Saint Denis, after letting her not just find closure but actively indulge in her rage against the O'Driscolls,
You ruined my life!
why did she still choose loyalty the way that she did? Why stick with the person who chastises you, who calls you reckless every single time you're anywhere near an O'Driscoll?
What the hell is wrong with you? I only left you an hour ago. You can't stay out of trouble for one goddamn hour. You got that poor bastard killed for his troubles. I kinda liked him.
When the alternative is siding with someone who, just like Arthur, was there the day your life fell apart. Someone who pulled you from the wreckage. Someone who made you feel human again. In fact, Dutch even went further than Arthur the day Sadie was saved. He calmed Sadie down to lower her knife, placed a warm coat over her shoulders, and warmly welcomed her into the safety of the Van der Linde gang. That was her introduction to who Dutch was, or who she believed he was, and it stuck with her. And yet, even for a relative outsider who had the shortest time with the gang, she was able to recognize that man didn't exist by the time Beaver Hollow rolled around. The Dutch she was watching now indulged every bloodthirsty whim. He enjoyed her outburst at Colm's hanging. He stood by while the gang shattered its original code of conduct. Well, he didn't just allow it, he actively encouraged it. During the entirety of Beaver Hollow, he isn't restraining anyone's actions anymore. He no longer pleads with Arthur to get along with Micah, or promising one big score to fund their getaway to Tahiti. Instead, it's anger just to have faith in an abstract plan only he is privy to. He's weaponizing his own loss of control and falling back on long-standing faith to keep his concerned, albeit arguably best guns in line. He utilizes smoke, noise, and distraction, with the idea that they can let the law look the other way while everything burns, while they quietly slip away. Arthur, on the other hand, never abandoned what the gang was meant to be. Even as his health deteriorated, even as his body began to fail him, he stayed anchored to the principles the gang was originally built on. It wasn't vengeance or any kind of indulgence, but restraint, a sense of responsibility, and understanding that the people standing beside you mattered more than whatever momentary satisfaction the chaos could bring. And Sadie noticed that difference. Her loyalty to Arthur wasn't earned because he encouraged her anger, or because he gave her permission to unleash it. It came from the fact that he was the only one still trying to keep things from going too far, the only one pushing back against the spiral. The only one who seemed to understand that once everything was allowed to burn, there wouldn't be anything left worth saving. The short, oversimplified version of this video is this. Sadie stuck with Arthur because she still had principles. Despite her unfortunate, deeply rooted, and highly justified rage against the O'Driscolls, she didn't agree with letting John rot in Sisika Penitentiary. She did not agree with letting Abigail hang for John or the rest of the gang's crimes, without at least trying to rescue her. And perhaps on some level, Arthur's opposition to Dutch and his growing sickness that hindered his effectiveness and willingness to fight alienated him in a way that put him in a very similar boat to Sadie. Sadie made it known that throughout the game, she always felt like an outsider. In some way, there was hope for the other gang members. There was things to look forward to. There was a life that they were looking to have someday. Sadie had that life, and it was ripped from her. She's broken. She's not looking to return to that life because what she had, the version of it, was perfect. So while Dutch, Micah, and the rest of the modern Van der Linde gang continue to move from job to job and slowly isolate and cut off John, Abigail, and Arthur due to his proven loyalty to John and his growing opposition to Dutch, Sadie and Arthur were not far from each other on where they stood. They both believed in something, looked out for other people the way they felt was right, and didn't belong for one reason or another within Dutch's new world. Now, for those that want a more layered reason for why I feel this way, let's begin.
You okay, miss?
They came 3 days ago, and my husband,
Miss, you are safe now.
While I don't think we need to go far into the origins of Sadie, Dutch, and Arthur, I still feel it's worth going over to cover the entire basis here. As I said before, Sadie's introduction to Dutch was, well, not just as a savior from the O'Driscolls, and certain death in the wilderness had the O'Driscolls managed to never find her, but Dutch also saved her from Micah. Micah was tormenting a terrified and extremely vulnerable Sadie. She knew her husband was killed and left out in the wilderness, and from her perspective, She was hiding within her house while a massive firefight erupted outside, only to have 3 more armed men enter her house. Yes, these 3 men wiped out the entire original raiding party, but that doesn't immediately scream friendly. Especially not when they raid her home for supplies, go out into the stable, stealing whatever horses are there, and then engage in a brutal fistfight while one of them stood over watching, callously confident in what the winner's outcome would be. When she is finally discovered, it's the worst of these 3 that find her, Micah. She's already scared, and Micah does nothing but make it all worse. A perfect contrast to amplify her feelings towards Dutch's hospitality and warmth. He not only pushes Micah aside and orders him to stand down, but also does his best to calm Sadie down, possibly talking to her as the only person in the last couple of days to speak to her like a human being, to look her in the eyes, make sure she's okay, give her some warmth, and escort her to safety. This is the natural progression of the story and the way Sadie's brought into the Vanderlyn gang. For most people, that's where it stays for quite some time. She's there, but far out of the way in the background. Someone you may casually run into while strolling through Horseshoe Overlook, finding her alone, catching some peace and quiet by herself, or being comforted by one of the gang's women, most notably Abigail. If you stick strictly to the game's story, however, she isn't seen again all the way until her and Pearson begin to butt heads during Clement's Point. And by that point, she's already moved past the paralyzing point of her grief. The shock is gone, the numbness has somewhat faded, and all that's left is anger, resentment, and pure rage. She's no longer acting from loss alone, but from everything that loss has thrusted her to deal with. Now, these are all important fragments that begin to build and form Sadie as the character that she turns out to be as the game progresses. So we will focus on them bit by bit, but first, we need to focus on one particular interaction that most people, if not everybody, will miss. And this interaction is in Coulter.
It's okay. It's okay. You're safe now. She'll be okay, Arthur.
I'm sure she will, Mary Beth. Ma'am, I'm real sorry about all of this.
My husband, my house.
I don't know what to say.
He
Sorry.
seeketh unto him a cunning workman to prepare
Anyway,
a graven
try not
image
to worry.
that
Sadie is so distraught she can't even speak. She's been clothed, settled, and she's being looked out for. Mostly by Mary Beth, but really by the gang as a whole, at a time when staying close to one another wasn't just comforting, but necessary. Uniquely here, the gang as a whole is in a very similar position to Sadie. The gang itself is barely holding together. They just lost Davey right in front of them. Mac and Sean are missing with nothing but hope that they somehow made it out. John barely crawled back to camp, half eaten by wolves with the help of Javier and Arthur, not to mention he was still suffering from a gunshot wound he took back in Blackwater, and none of them can go back for the money. They can't strategically regroup. They're here because this was the only direction left after escaping an overwhelming, aggressive police presence that nearly wiped them out. Personal loss, vulnerability, fear, uncertainty. Every single person in this camp is carrying some version of it, and yet panic doesn't infect a single one. And that's not because things aren't bad, they really are. It's because there's faith in Dutch. Faith that he has a plan. Faith that as long as they stay together, there's a way forward. Right now, that plan is touchingly human. Stay warm, stay alive, look out for each other. And in this world of losing everything, that human level means everything to Sadie. The people watching over her, feeding her, keeping her close, they're the way they are because of the same man who personally rode out and went to save her. That's not to say this was a rescue mission from the outset by intent, it just so happened to be that way. But she still was saved by them. Through them, she's then introduced to Dutch's way of life and way of thinking by their actions. She isn't let in on it through speeches or ideals, but purely through their own behavior. Through how these people treat one another when everything else has gone to shit, and Sadie's own experiences with Dutch only reinforce that. To her, this isn't just another lawless criminal gang that took her in, despite her own words saying that. In Horseshoe Overlook, when shock and grief give ways to resentment and anger, it's a group bound together by belief in a man who in the darkest moments proved himself to be real. Now, if we switch over to Sadie's interactions with Abigail and Horseshoe Overlook, they reveal quite a few things that are enlightening and heartbreaking. For one, Sadie was suicidal. She, by her own words, wished she wasn't so weak and was capable of taking herself out. She wasn't strong enough to help her husband, and she wishes every day the O'Driscolls killed her right there with him.
It just takes time, Miss Sadler.
I wish they would have killed me too.
I know.
I wish it every goddamn day.
I know.
You know, if I had any courage if I wasn't so damn weak. I I'd kill myself too.
We both know that ain't true. We both know the bravery is in the living. I don't know you very well, but I can tell you're brave, Mrs. Adler. I really can.
I don't seem very brave.
Nonsense. You're about the bravest woman I ever met. And that tells me you got the courage. The courage to live.
I hope so. I really do.
Abigail is the one to speak to her and bring her back to reality, to remind her that there is no weakness in living or being spared the death her husband received. Rather, it's the opposite. There's strength in living, there's strength in suffering. I like to think these earliest interactions with Abigail are what positioned Sadie to be so dedicated to John and Abigail later in the game. Abigail was there when Sadie needed someone. She was the one to hear her out, yet give her enough space. If she needed, she knew where to find her. And what's so interesting about the relationship is it never becomes full girl besties. Sadie doesn't fall into the same position as the rest of the women of cleaning and hanging around the camp. In hindsight, I actually like that there's little on-screen interactions between the two of them because it does leave quite a bit of room to speculate on what their overall relationship was like and how it all evolved from her being comforted by Abigail, who was having her own issues with John at the time, not wanting to be around her or Jack, all the way to Sadie eventually comforting Abigail on breaking John out of prison, and then ultimately in the end calming her down upon hearing John's supposed killing from the failed train robbery at the end of the game. It's something I can probably get on for quite some time, so I'm just going to move on and focus on one particular point from here that Arthur knew all too well: the trauma of losing someone close to you. In every one of these early interactions in the camps, if you take the time to speak to Sadie, Arthur always expresses his condolences to her, even when she says this:
I just wanted to say, I'm sorry about your husband, your home.
He was worth 100 of you thieves and murderers.
I have no doubt.
I take that as an insult, especially at this point in time where Arthur is the brutal enforcer. He's far from sick and he's far from thinking twice about his actions at this point in time. There's no need for him to be reflective. Hosea and Dutch were still in the right mental states at that point in time. They still had the ability to rein people in, and so there was no need to really let Sadie slide here, but Arthur still does. He just lets it be. Curious for a strange random woman they just save, have such resentful words towards them. But then again, you gotta remember something about Arthur. He was in a very similar position. He lost his son Isaac and the boy's mother Eliza. He never says more beyond this, sadly.
I got there one day and saw two crosses outside. I knew right away. Turned out some bastards had come through, robbed them, and shot them dead. And offered $10. Hardened me, feeling that kind of pain.
But it does mirror Sadie's own evolution, that I think, given Arthur's own moments of reflection as the game progresses, is aware of what Sadie's going through. Arthur says that that kind of pain, personal pain, that deep pain of wishing it was you or wishing you were there or wanting things to be different, eats at you and it alters the way you think and the way you carry yourself. As we've seen with Abigail, Sadie had similar feelings. She wished she was dead. She wished things were different. And when she came to the moment to just accept that she was going to be suffering for the rest of her life because she lost the love of her life, that kind of pain does harden her. Is this as grand as other connections they may come to have? I wouldn't necessarily say so, but it is an interesting aspect that does shed light on not just both Arthur and Sadie individually, but together as people, damaged by personal pain and loss. Maybe. Well, thinking about that, I do also want to point this particular quote out as well. In the aftermath of the O'Driscoll's raid on the gang's hideout in Saint-Denis, while Sadie's still covered in O'Driscoll's blood, which, by the way, is the first major rageful outburst Sadie ever actually has, completely dwarfing what she does in Clement's Point, while Sadie's still covered in blood, Arthur will tell her to be careful and he calls her a killer. She'd snap back and say it's rich coming from him, but all he says is, no, seriously, I mean it. It's a slippery slope to lose yourself to that. It's one inherently tied closely to the gang's motto of revenge being a fool's game, which is all the more prominent in this game's chapter, where we see Dutch lose himself to his rage on Bronte. Is it coincidental that it begins to fall apart just as Sadie starts asking to be more involved? But Clement's point, the respect between her and Arthur is already there. It comes from their first outing into town together, something that starts off as just a small favor, just a way to get her away from Pearson for the sake of the gang's sanity. While initially unremarkable on the outset, that trip is where the two of them start getting a better read on each other. For Arthur, she's still the new presence within the gang, figuring out where she fits and what she's capable of and how to find a better outlet for the anger that's now consuming her. For Sadie, it's the real look at what this life actually involves, understanding that they're outlaws, not criminals. They don't just kill indiscriminately, and while she technically did defend herself against the Lemoyne Raiders, she did mess up by allowing it to be as messy or as close to camp as it was. Regardless, the most important fact out of this is it's the first time someone treats her like she can actually handle herself. Arthur doesn't hover over her, he doesn't overly chastise her except for making it clear that you can't do foolish or reckless things. Apart from that, he really doesn't talk to her like she needs to be managed. And that separates him from Dutch because while Dutch welcomes her and offers her that initial protection, it's not until Beaver Hollow where he stops seeing her as someone that's fragile or someone that is able to be brought in on jobs. He acts like she needs to be kept away from the harsher parts of the gang's life, while Arthur doesn't.
In our absence, Mrs. Adler here has been looking after things.
What happened in...
Guam?
Yeah.
Nothing nice.
What happened to Dutch? 'Cause he seems...
I don't know.
Clement's point, Arthur explains to Sadie the difference between them versus killers and mindless criminals. The attack on Shady Belle allowed her the emotional outlet she's been needing while demonstrating to everyone, particularly Arthur, she's not some vulnerable, desperate woman in need of saving anymore. She's more akin to a woman who internalized that lack of wanting to live and using it to look after those that looked out for her. What makes her different from the rest, though, is she didn't grow up within this gang. So in a way, it's more like she fits closer to Micah and Charles. Micah's the outlier as he's just Dutch's catalyst and only loyal to the chaos they can bring together, but he does fall into a similar category to the other two because of them all being relatively new. Apart from that, Charles finds a sense of belonging and responsibility in helping out the Wapitis, while Sadie's, if you want to call it loyalty, or more so her life mission, was more akin to making sure the O'Driscolls suffer and every single one of them are wiped out. A primary goal that's put on the back burner in the aftermath of the Saint-Denis bank robbery. Of course, that job wiped out much of the gang's leadership and experienced gunmen. Those that weren't killed were sent into exile, washing up on the faraway island of Guarma, leaving the woman and Jack in an extremely compromising position with law enforcement on their way. They only managed to make it out thanks to Sadie. Through the numerous patrols the Pinkertons flooded Saint-Denis and Shady Belle, Sadie managed to gather everyone up and move them before the Pinkertons descended on their camp. Now, it's never made perfectly clear if Charles had reached them in time and told them everything, giving them all a giant head start, or if Sadie and the rest of the gang's members got nervous as nightfall began to descend and no word of what happened or the robbery or the rest of the gang members came through. There's also a possibility that they might have heard the explosion and numerous gunshots from Saint-Denis. Regardless, Strauss is the one that gives her credit for moving them, and with the help of Charles, she was able to relocate those who were staying in Lacaille Lake so the gang could hold up there. As smaller footnotes in the game's story, yet equally as massive, was Sadie mounting a robbery on the morgue, with Charles to retrieve Lenny's body, and her and Abigail doing the same with Hosea's, giving both of them a proper burial right next to each other, while leaving behind an encrypted note for any other member that went missing to stumble across and know that none of the other gang members were captured, but simply hiding, and they can find them all at Lacaille Lake. For Sadie's position within the gang, it does a number of things. It allows her to take charge, assume the role of protector at a crucial time when everyone that originally occupied those positions went missing, and the rest of the gang was beginning to crumble. The atmosphere within the gang was extremely apocalyptic. As Sadie would later tell Arthur, it was so bad, in fact, that Karen drowned herself in alcohol. Strauss was a bag of nerves that was unable to get a hold of himself, and Reverend Swanson, feeling like the end of the world was right around the corner, just so happened to get himself up and clean. A glimmer of hope and positivity in an otherwise horrible situation. And yet, while getting all these people together, she was still able to show some love, devotion, and unity to Lenny and Hosea by retrieving their bodies and then respectfully burying the both of them. She would go on to display another telling aspect of her leadership skills by providing the means for others to find them as well, including leaving similar letters to the one Arthur found at Shady Belle in strategic locations. We know Javier found his way to Lacaille Lake thanks to a letter left at the post office. This all covered their bases in a way that wasn't just them moving desperately away from the praying eyes of the law, but ensuring they'll all be whole again. with John potentially and hopefully being the only unique case because he was in police custody. Even in police custody, though, they still kept a close eye on him. Sadie was aware that John was working a chain gang in Cynic Penitentiary. All she needed was confirmation that he was still there when the gang was in a position to do their best to recover him. Yet, that would never come. The Pinkertons' attack on LeKay gave Dutch a moment to let his calm and clear mind slip right through the center of camp.
We need a couple of days. Now! Please, gentlemen. George.
What next, Dutch?
We just need some time. I need some time. Now, we can't go east, because then we'll be in the ocean, so we're gonna have to go north, I guess. I just need somebody to buy me some goddamn time, one of you.
You'll figure it out, boss. You always do.
What are you gonna do about John, Dutch?
John,
He's in jail.
we'll get him. Abigail, just not yet.
There's talk of hanging him.
It's not gonna come to that.
Dutch!
Not now, Mesa. Not now.
The distress, the anxiety, the anger and inability to think clearly while snapping at everybody might be a little more significant than we might all think. Remember, nobody here knew what happened to Gorma. In fact, Dutch barely returned after an extremely long hiatus, which only made the entire gang question whether if any of them, let alone Dutch, would return. And as we and Arthur see, the Dutch in Gorma was a very different man than the Dutch at the beginning of the game, and the Dutch that they all seen before the Saint-Denis bank robbery went to hell. Arthur himself witnessed him strangle an old woman to death after claiming that he knew Spanish and was aware that she was in fact going to betray them. His dismissal of Abigail's pleas to save John in fear that they might hang him on its own might have been enough to convince Sadie Dutch is not in the right state of mind, leaving it up to her and Arthur to do what Dutch isn't willing or wanting to do. At the start of Icarus and Friends, Sadie even questions Arthur what happened in Gorma because of the way Dutch is acting, and if there was any sense of doubt in his weird stances and change of mind, it would only be solidified when John is returned to camp. Dutch responds angrily, claiming he had a plan and they aren't ready for the law presence when they inevitably come down on them thanks to Arthur's disobedience in rescuing John. Now, I've always signaled that this emotional outburst from Dutch was a major turning point between him, Arthur, John, and Micah. It was a blatant moment of disobedience at a time when Dutch demanded unquestioning loyalty, and Micah was there to witness it all, quietly disappearing into Dutch's corner. It serves massively within those contexts, but for Sadie, she doesn't even appear here at all. No angles within those cutscenes show her. Her job there was done, which to me signals two things. One, her primary focus was rescuing John and bringing him back safely to Abigail, which she achieved. The gang's inner politics didn't concern her, so why hang around? Why continue to waste time and bicker and feed more into that internal divide when the more personal concern for her was the guaranteed hanging of Colm? Now, the rescue of John and Colm's hanging were not isolated events in her mind, but were two things that just so happened to be happening concurrently. We see that while she's doing research on Cynic Penitentiary. While she's out procuring a hot air balloon ride for Arthur, she shares how she's been doing research on the O'Driscolls and that she's learned that the O'Driscolls are being pushed out into the same region that the Vanderlyn gang has. And in the conclusion of this mission, she also mentions that she's aware that Colm is in police custody and he's going to be hanged in Saint-Denis. Something that even if Arthur cares little about right now and John is the more pressing concern, she does share Dutch would love to see Colm hang. It explains why she's there allowed to witness Colm's hanging, as she was the one who did all the reconnaissance and brought Dutch up to speed on all of it. During the opening moments of the trio entering Saint-Denis, they also all share their personal losses at the hands of Colm. At one point, Arthur mentions how Colm struck him up and nearly butchered him. He wants to see Colm hang, just like the rest of them, if not more. Sadie, however, points out, unlike her husband, Arthur actually managed to escape. Sympathy for what she would claim is possibly her closest friend is sidelined when the question of who hates Colm and his gang more. And really, in hindsight, rewatching their interactions, at least in this isolated sense of just this whole mission, there's a lot of tension between Dutch and Arthur. They're both quick to make comments of how Dutch misses the old Arthur who didn't question him. Arthur responds by, "Don't we all, and if Dutch will keep his head cool." He even at one point snaps at Dutch's orders to take someone out quietly.
So, they got a guy up on the roof overlooking the gallows. Find a way up there, onto one of these verandas, through a building maybe, and get him. And do it silently.
Well, obviously I'm gonna do it silently. I want to see this bastard swing.
They speak much more like bickering equals unhappy on being set out on a job together, with Sadie caught in the middle, at one point telling both of them to just knock it off and keep their cool. Perhaps that too is a way of just saying she's stuck in the middle of the both of them, when right now she just wants to be satisfied with Colm's killing. As the mission continues, as Colm is killed, and Arthur ensures both Dutch and Sadie make a getaway out of the city, for Sadie, her job is not done here. Colm was the face of her downfall, but his gang represented all the pain and torment she's suffered since then. So the next time Arthur sees her, she's preparing in camp for a final raid on the last O'Driscoll holdout at Hanging Dog Ranch. Considering everything, she feels the need to do this, despite Arthur admitting with the Colm's death he doesn't care enough. The deal, then concluded by the two of them, sets forth the events of where the two of them head when the gang falls apart, and depending on where your honor level is, you'd get two different interactions.
I'll tell you what, I'll do it, but there's something you could help me with. Abigail, Jack, John, make sure they make it. I mean, this whole thing is pretty much done, but when the time comes...
How do you mean?
When the time comes, you help them.
What do you mean?
I mean it. Help them escape when I... You know, you and me, we're more ghosts than people, but them, they could...
I know.
If your honor's high, Arthur explains John, Abigail, and Jack have a future. Arthur and Sadie don't, but there's something there for the three of them, and Dutch has proven to have a willingness to sacrifice them. If your honor's low, the image of a pure family and honest life is replaced with Sadie and Arthur acknowledging Dutch's destroyed image of loyalty.
I'll tell you what, I'll do it, but there's something you could help me with.
Sure.
You, me, and John. This whole thing is pretty much done, but Dutch still has our money hidden away, so...
How do you mean?
When the time comes, just be ready.
What do you mean?
I mean, if we can get out of here with money, you and me, we're more ghosts than people. And none of that loyalty matters.
Jesus. Okay, I'm with you.
In one scene, you get Arthur appealing to the side of Sadie that knew what it was like to have what this small family can obtain, while the other touches on the dissolution of whatever this gang at one point represented. In return, Sadie gets the help of the one person she trusts most here. And so we see a natural progression of Sadie coming to understand what this gang is, how to abide by their rules in a way that deviates from the savages that ruined her life, to then look out for them temporarily, follow through with her revenge, and stick to a friend that helped her out on that final personal mission of hers. In exchange, she promised to stay loyal to something more than just an obligation. It was an idea, a belief and a faith in helping good people get out of a horrible life. She trusted Arthur. He came through in that final personal vendetta, an entire outing that directly went against the idea of revenge being a fool's game. And instead, he stuck to the side of one of his last remaining friends. And so Sadie not only paid him back, but helped John, and even looked out for Abigail, who through such a trying time in Sadie's life, took the time out of her day to sit down, talk to her, and be brutally honest. Her loyalty, or rather her rejection, of Dutch is multi-layered as well. Dutch went back on everything that he taught them. He went back on everything he lived by and all the rules and regulations that he made sure the gang individual members conducted themselves by. He abandoned the same idea that Sadie was mended back together under. And even if she felt like a complete outsider, that didn't mean that she was incapable of acknowledging Dutch was no longer the same person.